I feel that a lot of people believe that companies are just a vehicle to make money.
Big mistake. Capitalism is a very good engine to achieve stuff, but to achieve what? So the question of the purpose is critical. So I think people confuse the how you run the show. You need a sustainable car, an engine that works. You need to make profits so that the company stays afloat or the NGO stays afloat. But you don't want to stay afloat, right? Or to make profit. You make profit because it propels you from one point, state, to another point. And a company that doesn't have a mission cannot find their client. They don't contribute to their client, to their communities, to their stakeholders. They won't succeed.
Pierre Lorenceau is a Harvard graduate who founded Leaders League and later sold the company before turning his focus to impact investing, with a strong emphasis on climate tech. He's a professor of leadership and strategy at Paris-Saclay, where he teaches the next generation of leaders how to align capital, strategy, and long-term impact. Welcome to Reinventing Capitalism, the podcast where I, Claudia Thomas, decode the success of for-profit impact businesses through the stories of their founders. Our goal is to inspire you towards a purpose-driven career, because life's too short for boring jobs and soul-crushing corporations. Quick note before we get back to the episode. Just give me 30 seconds of your time. Two things. The first is a huge thank you for listening and tuning into the show week after week. It means the world to me. And the second is that we are just getting started. If you enjoy what we do here, please join the 14% of people that listen to this podcast regularly and follow us on this app. I promise to do everything in my power to make this show as good as I can, now and into the future. Thank you. Pierre, how are you?
Very good. Thanks.
I'm so happy to be here. I can't say it's the first time that I'm in this building, and I actually love coming and seeing the different people, like everyone working in their spaces. For full disclosure, we're at Climate House here in Paris. So thank you so much.
Yeah, it's full of energy.
Full of energy. So Pierre, you've had a very lengthy and successful career. You've gone from studying at Harvard to founding Leaders League, the business services company that you've worked for almost 30 years, if I'm not mistaken.
22 or something.
22. Okay, 22. To getting into the impact world, specifically now focusing on climate.
And just for the record, it's actually, I started a company when I was a law student at Assas, and it's the success of Leaders League at Assas that got me into Harvard. So it's the entrepreneurship at a very young age, I was 21, that took me into Harvard. I actually run the company from Boston, even though the company was in France, which was kind of crazy. There was no Zoom at the time, there was no Teams at the time, so you were managing people just over the phone or by this recent thing called emails, which had popped up just a few years ago. And we grew the company twofold in 1999 and 2000, despite the distance. And I was basically reading the case during the morning and applying during the day, the night.
Wow, that's awesome. How did you do it?
Not sleeping. So I guess by virtue of passion and virtue of necessity. And also I like people. So every business story is about the people, both the people inside the company, the one you recruit, the one you grow, the one you train, as well as the people you meet outside the company, your clients, your partners, and so on. And so I guess I got just carried by this energy of people inside, people outside, and matching the whole thing.
Yeah. What did the company actually do?
So Leaders League was basically a ranking company. We were doing a rating agency of leaders. So it was great because every day I would meet 4 or 5 leaders. I had to rank them. We would not rank the people per se. We would rank Morgan Stanley versus Goldman Sachs in investment banking, TMT, or Sherman Sterling versus Ian Overy in capital markets. So we'd rank per practice, per country, who are the leaders in a specific sector, in a specific niche expertise. And so I met amazing people at a very young age, and everyone was bringing me a piece of the jigsaw of what's leadership, because they were all really good in their field. If not, they wouldn't be in my rankings. So I built this rating agency business for 25 years, about 25 years over France first, and then Europe, and then global, and ended up running a 200 plus people business with office in 14 countries and a reach of 45 countries.
Now that you said the word leadership, you've changed your idea of leadership throughout your career.
Totally.
How so, and who has inspired you?
Tough one. I come from a background, a right-wing family where this kind of authority was the grandfather has authority on the father on the son. And so it looked very simple. It's pretty much a top-down approach, right?
Yeah.
And then I discovered leadership is exactly the opposite. It's more like a bottom-up system as opposed to a top-down system. In France, to be honest, most people confuse the word management and leadership. In the US, a lot of people would do the confusion, but a lot more people do the distinction between what's management, managing project, managing stuff, managing process, versus leadership, which is leadership is about people, bringing them energy, growing them, being carried by them. And so, power is top down.
Mm-hmm.
Leadership is to some extent bottom up, but it's not completely true. Leadership is bottom up, but also top down. When you're a leader, sometimes you have to exercise authority, but most of the time you should be open to the bottom up approach, which is to learn from other, let other do it. It's about empowering other people. So it's about de-empowering yourself. You don't empower the other if you don't drop the power and give them the power. So I think people don't understand the beauty of leadership, which is don't try to do everything. Just focus on getting everyone happy, everyone doing their best stuff in their comfort zone, but also how do you help them grow a bit outside their comfort zone? Too much uncomfortable zone, people resent you. But if you find the right balance and you give them assignments in their comfort zone so they succeed, and outside their comfort zone, but a bit so that they learn and grow themselves, then people love you, love their job, and that's the tipping point.
Yeah, I can imagine that that's not easy. You need to work on leaving your ego aside in order to let other people grow instead of yourself. How did you learn to do that? If any leader struggling with that is listening today.
Very easy. Mistake after mistake after mistake after mistake.
There's no shortcut.
And then when I say mistake, is like people that drops the company because you haven't heard the signal that they're uncomfortable. That the pressure's too big or this or that. So in the first 5, 6, 7 years of me as a manager/leader, or a manager trying to be a leader and unsuccessfully, I've learned by doing mistakes. I've also learned some of the ropes, I guess, at Harvard. Coming back to the contrast between this French mentality of power is top down, not just in the family, but also in the society. And it has changed a bit, but it's still a bit there. And Harvard, I could see people really impactful. We had impact on our teachers, even though they were above us, so to speak. So I learned the basics, some of the concepts at Harvard. But actually, Harvard, brought me in because I had learned some of the stuff, I would say interview after interview, doing my ranking. So I learned the first base was meeting leaders for Leaders League, which was both a rating agency and a media. Second was Harvard on the conceptual layer. And then when I got back and I thought I knew it all, I was still doing tons of mistakes. So I guess I started to really get it probably 8 to 10 years into the job as a founder and CEO.
Okay, so then we can agree that you truly, truly learn the hard way.
Yes, but I think most people learn the hard way. Maybe they have an amazing mom and pop that give them the tricks and the ropes and are not too top down and they just imitate mom and dad. It wasn't the case for me.
No, that's good to know.
I had to undo some of the thing I was told.
Yeah, no, it's good to know because I think a lot of people will feel related to this, and leadership from the outside looks super cool and, like powerful and like someone that actually leads, but there's a lot of things that people don't see from the background. So I think it's a very important message.
And I think people confuse a person with power is supposed to be a leader in most people's mind. Or a decision maker, to take a neutral term, a decision maker is perceived to be a leader. No, you can be a decision maker that's just a power-hungry bastard.
Yeah.
Meaning with abuse of power.
Yeah.
You can be a power-neutral person, meaning top-down, but not abusive. So there's power and abuse of power, which is two different things. And then you can be a leader, meaning bottom-up approach. You empower people, you let go, you get your ego under control. And obviously, a decision maker should be sometime a bit of a power person with no abuse, obviously.
Yeah.
And most of the time, to be a bottom-up person that listens, 2 ears, 1 mouth, that put the right people in place and step out. And that takes time to learn that a decision maker, there's many types. Some rely on leadership, some rely on power, some rely on abuse of power and power. And obviously you have to find the right mix without any abuse between power and leadership.
Yeah, I agree. So you, after 22 years, you decided to leave Leaders League.
I sold the company.
You sold the company,
and
exactly.
The new owner didn't want another leader inside the company.
But what drove that decision? What were the signals that were telling you that you were ready for a new chapter?
The first signal is the planet was burning, and Leaders League was about the G governance of ESG. So in ESG, you have environment, social, and governance. I started with the governance part, trying to bring a world with more leadership and less top-down power stuff. But you don't do that because you love governance. You do that because you love the people. You love the S. Therefore, you work on your G, your way of not governing but empowering people. So I started my career for 20 plus years on the S and G, and then I wanted to start, making a contribution on the E, environment.
Did you always know that you wanted to contribute to the S and the G, or that came along?
No, it was implicit. I felt just more at ease when we had the right framework with people, the right rules of, team building and team setup.
So there was some sort of intuition that when you were doing the right thing, your business mind went there, and you knew that that was something that you wanted to pursue.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I made it a mission. The reason the company was called Leaders League is I wanted to promote leadership as a governance system as opposed to power. I wanted more people to be empowered, not just in my company, but across the board. And I think we did a fair job. But then the planet started to burn. And at first I didn't see it, like most people. And it took me in between 2010 and 2016, I guess, to realize that those people who were trying to, alert us were right. And they were actually below reality. The green people were actually below reality when they were saying that the planet was heating up. So when I sold, I knew I wanted to invest in climate tech. And that's what I did from year one after selling.
Before we get into that, if you look back at your career, it seems that one thing really led you to another. You graduated from uni, you started Leaders League, you got into Harvard, and then you sold your business. What were the forces that were guiding all of these decisions?
When I was a kid, I read a book called The Three Kingdoms. Okay. It's one of the most well-known Chinese books. And basically, you have a young king. One of the three kingdoms is ruled by him. That goes from one fiefdom to one fiefdom. And each time he tries to upgrade himself by going to the most wise person in the province, so to speak. And so at the beginning, he goes with good masters, and then great wise master, and then amazing wise master, like moving from the local Confucius to the global Confucius. So, I tried to upgrade myself by going to places where I would be surrounded by the right people or the right wise mentor. Harvard was obviously one of those places.
Understood. Before moving to what you do now, how you've translated all of these into climate tech, I want to first give the audience a little bit of context in terms of what it means, everything that we're doing, that you're doing, the type of concept that I'm trying to educate the audience on, which is reimagining capitalism and the role of business in this new capitalism. So let's start by understanding what it is. When you talk about conscious capitalism, what's the essence that you really want people to get away with?
Okay. So there's a book that's amazing about the topic and totally true. It's called Conscious Capitalism. It's a Bible on the topic. And so let's try to explain the core concept. When you think about capitalism, a lot of media portray capitalism as a very top-down approach. You're my employee, I can fire you. I have power over you. Or you're my client, I can try to push a price rise. Or you're my supplier, I own the check, so I can rule you because I own the check. That's totally false. Because if we're in an employee-employer relationship, I can fire you, but you can quit as well. So the balance of relationship, if you're my top expert, I'm dying to keep you happy. I'm happy to make sure you stay with me as opposed to go to competition. So capitalism looks like it's top down, but it's actually very horizontal. An employer contract, maybe not in Libya or in Russia, but at least in Western countries and in democracies where you can resign, the balance is not always perfect, but if you have expertise and I have a need, it's pretty balanced, right? Same thing, if I'm a top supplier, like TSMC is providing, foundry business to NVIDIA, but they have almost a monopoly in printing chips. So if NVIDIA is not happy with them, they don't care. They can give their allocation of capacity to someone else. So the relationship in capitalism is much more complex than a top-down approach where the CEO is the ruler and the employee are the minions. No, the CEO is actually afraid of the top people leaving the company. The top people in the company are afraid the top lieutenants leave the company. So it's a very horizontal model. And that's the difference between dictatorship and capitalism. It's what I think people don't get.
Okay. So, but now you're talking about how it's structured within a business.
Mhm.
What is it really, the concept of conscious capitalism? How
Okay.
does it differ from capitalism?
Okay. So so capitalism per se is more horizontal than it looks. But then there's how people practice it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why there's a problem, because more people practice it as a top-down system or believe it's a top-down system, and it builds frustration, resentment, unhappiness, and people leading with their feet. So reimagining capitalism is a very good mission that you've stated, and congratulations for that. It's to first understand that you don't need, power is about dividing to conquer. Leadership and reimagining capitalism is the opposite. It's uniting to conquer together, or to grow the pie together. So I think people are very focused on how do you share the pie between me and my suppliers, the pie between me, the company, and my employees. If they try to grow the pie, there's less pain. There's no problem because there's enough food for everyone. So I guess reimagining capitalism is to really focus people's attention on how the different pieces of the jigsaw, whether people or business, can come together to grow the pie. For example, if your supplier is squeezed on his margin, will he innovate? Will it bring value to you as an assembler? And then can you provide value to your own clients? No, if you squeeze your supplier, you get shitty products because you get shitty parts. Okay? If you leave some room for him to co-invent the product, which NVIDIA has been doing in its value chain, for example, then the pie grows. So I think reimagining capitalism is, the essence is finding a win-win situation, and it's not just words. It's finding better balance points so that everyone's happy at the end. Everyone gets more than they brought.
I love this idea of win-win, because normally people see businesses as extractive machines rather than value-adding machines.
Yeah.
So like, it feels that in business, it has to be a zero-sum game. And based on what you're saying, there's a world where every agent can get something out of the transaction.
Exactly. And the big auto companies in the 80s really believed that they should extract maximum value from their suppliers through bidding system and so on. And they got crushed. They got crushed by the Japanese, who put in place a very smart value chain where suppliers would bring them top innovation, and they would then build their market share both in Europe and the US. So every time you're trying to crush the other one because you think you have the upper hand, you're actually crushing your own value chain. You're actually crushing your own strengths situation. It may work for 3 months or maybe 2 years, but then everyone flies to the nice people. And by nice, I don't mean, shoe shining people, respectful people.
Yeah, for sure. You were talking earlier about what leadership is and what it is for you. Can you give me 3 key aspects that leaders need to have in a conscious capitalism world?
Okay. The first is empathy, because you cannot grow other people, you cannot gain their respect if you don't understand them. So if you don't empathize, and if you don't have benevolence on top of empathizing, then you cannot track people, build together, and so on. The second thing is ego under control. If you don't see your own weak spot and blind spots, you don't open up to the others, you don't bring them to your weak spots and so on. So I guess you need ego under control and know your own weakness, and also be able to say, I need help, or you're better than me in this field, in this field, in this field, because that's building balanced relationship. And the third thing, I guess, is some people call it vision or ambition. If you're just a nice guy with balanced team, but you don't know where to bring everyone, are you a leader? I guess not. You need this vision, this ambition, and probably this strategy. Because if you want to do something very disruptive, like changing capitalism, if you want to do something very disruptive, whatever the field, then you need to succeed where no one has succeeded. You're bringing them to unknown turf. So you need the words. Some people call it charisma, but you don't need just the word. You need a plan. The plan can be a mic. The plan can be, finding the right speaker to interview, or people to interview, decision maker to interview, to carry the change you want to see in the world. So I guess you need a vision and a strategy, which are 2 different things. If you know the goal but have no clue how to get there, people will listen to you, and then they'll say, you know what, I'm not sure you can get me there. So you need both the strategy and the goal. You need the bold goal that could make a lot of people anxious and excited, and you need, if not all the detail of the strategy, you need a strategy to get there. And some of the strategy you might build it while walking to the goal. Some you'd rather have at the beginning so you can bring in the best people to get there.
Okay, so we have 3.5 points. We have
True. They
we
get
have
an extra
empathy,
bonus.
we have ego death, we have vision and strategy.
Yeah, I wouldn't say ego death. I would say ego under control. That was
Ego under control.
Because
Better word. I agree.
Ego is not negative per se. It's when you trump your ego on other people's face or you step on their toes, that's the problem. If you know your strengths and you play your strengths and you bring it to the team, that's fine. If you reach your strengths or just play on your weakness because you are just the boss, that's when you are off limit.
So you fell into the world of conscious capitalism and impact, sort of, and then you decided to invest your time in climate.
Yeah.
Tell us about what you do now.
So I'm putting a lot of my exit capital, so to speak, to work by investing in climate leaders and climate tech. I focus mostly on climate software company because they scale fast and it can make a faster change to the world I want. So a lot of thing about capitalism is about having the right decision, making the right decision. Making the right decision is a lot about information. So can we bring the right information so that our decisions are more green conscious? It's about data, it's about software, it's about systems. And there's a lot of smart founders and smart companies, startups, that are making a change through software. At first, I thought it would be the hardware that would have the most impact, changing energy, changing transportation. But you know what? A lot of people are already working on that. B, there's a lot of CapEx and did a great exit, but I leave the CapEx to others. And C, there was an opportunity to make a change by backing climate software. So I stepped in and we've invested now about in 20 companies. They're all alive and kicking. 3 years after my first investment, so that's good. Most of them have done an up round already. Some are, cash conscious, so they didn't need to do a cash up round. And so we are very proud of the founders we back.
Hi, can I ask you a quick favor? Every week, we dive into the stories of founders that do more than just make money. Our mission is to prove that a career in impact can be both purposeful and financially sustainable. If you believe in creating meaningful work, share today's episode with one friend who's ready to make a difference. It would mean a great deal to me. Your support is what keeps this show alive and growing. Thank you. Why climate?
For me, that's the biggest pain on earth right now. I mean, there's too much power idiots. So I still hope more and more people learn leadership and run their team and show by leadership as opposed to power, and with no abuse of power. But my new cause is helping leaders that are focused on the most important problem I believe in, which is we need climate to be restored. We need a climate trajectory that's aligned with Paris agreements.
And the capital that you guys have, it comes only from your exit, or you have raised?
No mom and dad. No
mom and dad. You haven't needed more.
Nope.
Okay, that's amazing. And it gives you a lot of control towards about...
We did 2 exits, so it's also the money we invested that now has grown up.
Yeah. I feel that a lot of people believe that companies are just a vehicle to make money.
Big mistake. If you look at a car, the car has an engine. That engine may be called the profit engine. But the car is not about the engine. The car is about going from point 1 to a targeted point. So capitalism is a very good engine to achieve stuff, but to achieve what? So the question of the purpose is critical. So I think people confuse the how you run the show. You need a sustainable car, an engine that works. You need to make profits so that the company stays afloat or the NGO stays afloat. But you don't want to stay afloat to stay afloat, right? Or to make profit to make profit. You make profit because it propels you from one point, state, to another point. And a company that doesn't have a mission cannot find their client. They don't contribute to their client, to their communities, to their stakeholders. They won't succeed. The guy who actually wrote the book I mentioned earlier, Conscious Capitalism, he actually built a supermarket. But the supermarket, Whole Food, was all about green stuff, pain-free for animals, good for your health stuff. I mean, in the 80s, when people didn't care, especially in the US, where most people don't care. And what he did is try to grow that. And then suddenly there was a big storm and the supermarket was destroyed. But because it was missing to everyone's life, to get healthy food, to get the right ingredients for their meals every day, everyone helped rebuild the supermarket, okay? And now there's 500 Whole Food supermarkets, and they're doing 15 billion, I believe. And they've changed the way American eats. And so it's not because they were super optimized on cost and on recruiting. It's because they were serving a mission, an underserved mission, bringing good, healthy food to Americans. Even though it was more expensive, they're not cheap. They grew and grew and grew. So the guy who wrote the book is not just a consultant or an NGO or a guru.
He's a businessman.
He's a businessman who built a business of 15 billion in the course of his life.
Yeah.
And actually, he had a very interesting debate. You may have seen that. Him versus Milton Friedman. Friedman got the Nobel Prize, and Friedman is known in the late 70s to say the purpose of business is profit. And, it became the common thought, the common wisdom that business is about profit, and to serve shareholders. But one of the reasons that he was saying that at the time, Milton Friedman, I'm more on the founder of Whole Food, as you can guess, but at the time, a lot of the management technocracy was hiding the profit under the hood, would not serve dividends, would keep it to grow the company in real estate and other stuff, those conglomerates. So the shareholder would be screwed because the management would keep the money inside the company to have a bigger pie to manage.
To grow the company itself,
right.
not to...
But not in a strategic way, in more of a defensive way, so that if one division doesn't perform, it can still, win money. And the second thing, there was a war between capitalism and communism. So there was also a statement that it's not just to, help the Politburo, it's also to serve the shareholder. So he was trying to promote good governance, but it was understood. What's interesting in this book, Conscious Capitalism, it's all about not serving one stakeholder, would be the shareholder, but serving many stakeholders, serving clients, obviously, there's no business without the clients, serving the employees, because if you don't motivate people, they don't give the best of themselves and the client sees it, to serve the communities, to serve the suppliers, because they're part of the value chain, to serve the management team, who's not sleeping too much to make sure things get going. So this stakeholder mentality to try to align management practice to do a win-win-win-win, win for the client, win for the company, win for the suppliers, win for the communities. That's the trick. If you can get all those stakeholders which have competing interests in many ways, but if you can align those competing interests, then you blossom, then your company gets big, then your mission is accomplished and is accomplished faster because you're supported by your supplier, you're supported by your employee, you're supported by your clients. And that's the difference between great managers, they just get a bit more profit, and great leaders, they change the world.
This is a very interesting point because I had read this piece of data that showed that companies that implemented social innovation practices in their businesses outperformed their peers financially.
Yeah, true.
If it's true,
yeah,
why aren't there more people, meaning more companies doing so?
Okay, so I think more and more companies are doing so, and it's been measured, including by one of the co-authors of the book on conscious capitalism, and it's proven that if you think of all the stakeholders and align with all the stakeholders, including employees, you succeed faster. Now,
how? Can you give us a stint of how that works?
Yeah, sure. The thing is, let me go to, let's say, I guess I would say vector. If you have the right strategy, the right value proposition for clients, but your employee resents being exploited, guess what? You'll go slower, you'll have turnover, clients would be less satisfied. If you find the tipping point of satisfying every stakeholder, then something magic happens. And I think more and more companies are succeeding at finding the sweet spot of aligning stakeholders. So totally true.
Can you give us one or two more examples on other than Whole Foods of companies that have implemented this and that are actually very, very successful?
Well, Leaders League was successful because we were...
Which one?
Leaders League. My company was successful because we implemented a bit of that. I think the Silicon Valley companies, the Google and stuff, they're famous for leaving one day per week to do whatever the employee wants, as long as it's aligned with the broader picture of Google. You can have your pet project 1 day per week. That's 20% of your working time.
But is Google a company that is driven by social innovation?
I wouldn't say, well, there's two questions. Should you implement social innovation or should you be about social innovation? Google is not about social innovation. Their mission is to organize the world information, whether by AI or Google Cloud or whatever. But to achieve that, they understand they need to keep their employee happy. When their employee said, we don't want to do weapons for the US government, they had to back out. And the management has listened over and over and over to their employee wishes. Not always, but they've been open to the dialogue, open to listening, as opposed to if you don't want it, you just quit.
Okay, but here you're talking about making your employees happy. So you would be talking about culture-driven purpose and making sure that people are happy so that they are engaged and motivated. But that doesn't mean that Google is doing something good for the world. Like, yes, they're organizing the world information, but it doesn't have a social or environmental mission.
Again, there's the mission and there's the how.
Yeah.
I think every business on the planet should be carefully listening to their employee. That doesn't mean letting the employee run the show, but they should align their interest with their employee. They should serve their mission first, and the how is by serving also every stakeholder or being aligned with every stakeholder. And so I think having a social conscious, having a social approach is needed for extra performance. I'm not saying that every company should see it as their main focus, but it should be seen as a toolkit, so to speak, so that everyone's happy, the mission is more sustainably achieved and faster achieved if you have the best energy and the best commitment of your internal stakeholder, whether management or employee.
We're getting to the end of the interview. I would like to get your thoughts a bit more on the future and where we're headed. Considering everything that we've spoken about today, what do you think is the real role of a business in society today?
You know, I think each business should serve their mission very well. And to serve their mission very well, they should see employee good or stakeholder satisfaction as a fantastic engine to serve their mission, including to satisfy their shareholder. Maybe the CEO is scared of being fired by the shareholder. If you want to serve the shareholder, make sure the employee is happy because you get more profit if your employee is happy. So it might look like a calculus. It might look like a ploy, so to speak. But actually, if people understand that by design, their mission is better serve, including profits for business, not as a mission, but as an engine to get there, then I think more business will be flourishing and more people will be happy. Now, more and more, especially in autocratic countries or dysfunctional countries, including democracies sometimes, business are being asked to do what the state doesn't do. Like if you have a poor healthcare system, business is being asked to step up. And it's great if good business can step up. But I think we need to balance the responsibility of business, which more and more are being asked to do stuff that the state used to do. At the same time, sometimes the state should look at itself in the mirror and say, we're not doing our part here. So I think business should contribute to many system weakness. And at the same time, everyone should do their job and contribute to a broader good.
So we're going to end the interview in a similar way than we started, which is with leadership. Based on this answer, actually, so where business is headed, what is your advice for the next generation of leaders to be able to make it happen?
So my message to the young generation of leaders is don't believe leadership is easy. It's not. Don't believe manipulation is leadership. It's not. Leaders are straightforward. They call a cat. They help you grow. They tell you the truth. They think about the mission and the common good and not, they claim to think of the common good and actually are working for themselves. So don't make the confusion between someone that's manipulative and someone that has leadership. Both have influence, but one is thinking just for themselves. The other one is thinking for the common good. So focus your attention on how you can bring your own passion, your own energy, your own skill set to a cause you love, because that's where you be the most happy. And to achieve the most impact, learn how to work with other as opposed to manipulate other. Learn to grow other as opposed to grow yourself only. Learn to stretch yourself and stretch the team around yourself to achieve amazing goal. Every amazing goal was achieved because at least someone tried. 100% of big achievements, someone started it. So assign yourself a great goal and then find the great people to help you achieve this great goal. That's what I would suggest to young potential, high potential leaders.
Thank you, Pierre. Thank you so much. I've learned a lot from listening from listening to your advice today. You bring a lot of experience to the table, both from more of a leadership, like business perspective, and then turned into this new paradigm of business, which is very rich, because sometimes when you hear maybe younger leaders that have come from, the social entrepreneurship only, then they don't see the two-sided part of the coin. So I really appreciate that, and thank you so much for having me.
Great, and thank you for what you're doing. I think this podcast on reimagining capitalism is totally needed, and we have to reimagine power and deconstruct power, and as your question implied, by putting more leadership into the exercise of authority and responsibility to get where you want, which is reimagining capitalism.
Thank you.
Thank you.